The 2021 Stanley Cup Semifinals get underway tomorrow. Now, originally I wasn't going to do a predictions video for these two series just because I didn't do one for the second round, but then I thought back to last year, I made a preview and predictions for the Final Four, so I might as well do it again. Now, before I get into my predictions and give you guys my thoughts on these series, be sure to get down there in the comment section down below and let me know which two teams you have advancing to the Stanley Cup Finals. I'm really excited for this Final Four. I think an underrated aspect of it that not a lot of people are talking about is the fact that this is the first time we are seeing teams play other teams not in their division since last season. It's going to be refreshing seeing the Islanders play the Tampa Bay Lightning for the first time this year, the Canadiens playing the Golden Knights for the first time. I'm looking forward to it. I think these matchups should be a ton of fun, and with all that said, let's get into my predictions, starting on the side of the bracket with the New York Islanders going up against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, if you see my most recent video where we talked about the New York Islanders after they beat the Bruins in 6, you actually already know my prediction for this series, but I still do want to break down this matchup a little bit. First things first, let's just take a look at the record of these two teams so far in the postseason. Obviously, they both have 8 wins, or they wouldn't be here, but the Islanders have 4 losses, and the Tampa Bay Lightning only have 3. The Islanders beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in 6, and the Bruins in 6, and then the Lightning beat the Panthers in 6, and Carolina in 5. So the Tampa Bay Lightning have played one fewer game. They've had a longer rest than the Islanders have in between rounds here. That by default, I guess, makes the Tampa Bay Lightning the fresher team coming into this series, but I don't really think it's going to matter a whole lot. Now let's dive in and take a look at some basic team stats here, starting with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Throughout the playoffs so far, they have scored an average of 3.45 goals per game, which is the second highest out of the 4 remaining teams. They allow 2.36 goals against per game, which is the second lowest of the remaining teams. Their power play is clicking at 41.7% in the playoffs, which is far and away the best out of the 4 remaining teams. That's a ridiculous power play percentage, and their penalty kill is not too bad either. It's 77.8% heading into the third round, which is good for second. Now looking at the Islanders, they have been averaging 3.58 goals per game throughout the playoffs so far, which is actually the best of the remaining teams, and they allow 2.75 goals against, which is the worst of the remaining teams, and that kind of surprised me a little bit, just when you consider the suffocating style of hockey that they play, their defense-first oriented system. Now taking a look at the Islanders' special teams, their power play has been clicking at 28.1%, which is a really solid percentage, but it's still significantly lower than Tampa Bay's 41.7, and the Islanders' penalty kill has not been very good in the playoffs at all. It's only 61.5%, which is by far the worst of the 4 remaining teams, and that is something that would worry me a little bit heading into this series if I were an Islanders fan. If they get into penalty trouble in this series, it could get ugly. A struggling penalty kill going up against a power play that's been as lethal as Tampa Bay's, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. So I think if the Islanders want to be competitive in this series and really want to give Tampa Bay a run for their money, they're going to have to stay out of the box. They're going to have to stay disciplined. Next up, I want to quickly take a look at the leading scorers for each of these two teams so far in the playoffs. First, with the Islanders, Jean-Gabriel Pageau leads the way with 13 points. Josh Bailey and Anthony Beauvillier both have 11, and then Brock Nilsson has 10. Moving over to the Tampa Bay side of things, you have Nikita Kucherov with 18 points, which is currently the most of any player in the postseason so far. You then have Steven Stamkos with 13, and then Braden Point and Alex Killorn with 12 points apiece. And in regards to Nikita Kucherov and Steven Stamkos, 4 of Kucherov's 5 goals have came on the power play, and 3 of Stamkos' 5 goals have came on the power play. So again, Islanders have to stay out of the box in this series, especially with their power play struggling to the extent that it has so far in the playoffs. Now, one last thing we're going to take a look at before I give you guys my predictions, the goaltending stats. Andrei Vasilevsky for the Tampa Bay Lightning has an 8-3 record, a 2.24 goals against, and a 934 save percentage. He's been fantastic. And on the New York Islanders side of things, actually you have to look at both their goaltenders here. Semyon Varlamov has a record of 4-3 with a 2.62 goals against and a 925 save percentage. All of Varlamov's 4 wins coming in the second round against Boston, and then Ilya Sorokin 4-1, all 4 of those wins coming in the first round against the Penguins. He has a 2.32 goals against and a 934 save percentage. Both Varlamov and Sorokin have been amazing so far for the Islanders. It's a nice luxury for them to have 2 goaltenders that you can confidently go to, that you can trust. I'm guessing Varlamov gets the nod in game 1 against the Lightning. Sure, Sorokin's numbers are technically better, but Varlamov did win all 4 of the games in the second round against Boston, so I feel like you kind of just gotta ride the hot hand here. That's enough breaking things down. Let's get into my prediction now. I'm not going to drag this out because I did already give my prediction for this series in my most recent video, but big surprise, I'm going with the Tampa Bay Lightning here. I think they're going to go back to back. I really do. I was extremely impressed with what I saw from Tampa Bay in their second round matchup against the Hurricanes. Obviously, it really hurt Carolina being without Nino Niederreiter for the series and being without Vincent Trocheck for the majority of it, but still, that's a really good team, and Tampa Bay handled them rather comfortably. I really think we're seeing something from Tampa Bay that I actually predicted coming into the playoffs, and that is, the longer they go, the deeper they go into the playoffs, the better they're going to get. Stamkos missed a lot of time heading into the playoffs, so I think the more that he plays, the better he's going to get. Same goes for Kucherov. I mean, he didn't play since last year's Stanley Cup Final until the first round of this year. It just looked like he continued to get better game after game. This is a scary team. In terms of game amount for my prediction, I'm actually going to say 7 games. I do want to give the Islanders credit. They're just a resilient team. They're never going to quit. No matter how outmatched or outskilled they may be, they're going to put up a hell of a fight, I think. So final prediction, I'm taking the Bolts in 7. Moving on over to the other side of the bracket now, the Montreal Canadiens against the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm definitely more excited for this series than the Isles and the Bolts, just because we saw New York play against Tampa Bay in the 3rd round last year. This series, on the other hand, we've obviously never seen these two teams meet in the postseason, and if it were a normal year, this could only happen in the Stanley Cup Final because Vegas is in the West and Montreal's in the East. The Golden Knights are coming into this series with 8 wins, obviously, and 5 losses. It took them 7 games to knock off Minnesota in the first round, and it took them 6 games to knock off the President's Trophy winning Avalanche in the second round. Montreal, on the other hand, they've only had 3 losses, so they've played 2 less games than the Golden Knights. They beat Toronto in 7 in the first round, and then obviously swept the Winnipeg Jets in the second round, so they've been resting for a while now. Montreal is definitely coming into this series as the fresher team. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It depends on how you look at it. Yes, they could come into the series extremely rusty, or they could come out guns a-blazing, fully energized and rested up and just completely ready to go. You never know what's going to happen. Now diving into the team stats, the Montreal Canadiens have scored 2.55 goals per game throughout the playoffs so far, which is the lowest amount of the 4 remaining teams. But then on the other hand, they've only allowed 2.18 goals against per game throughout the playoffs, which is the best out of the 4 remaining teams. Yes, Carey Price is a big reason for that. He's been fantastic, but they've just been extremely good defensively. Like that series against Winnipeg, it was honestly pretty boring to watch. The Jets literally couldn't get anything, and when they were able to muster up a chance here or there, Carey Price obviously shut the door. Now looking at the Habs special teams, power play 18.8%, so mediocre, but their penalty kill on the other hand has been unreal, 90.3%. Not only have they been shutting down their opponent's power play, they've been pretty dangerous shorthanded. I think they have multiple shorthanded goals. If I had to guess, they probably have the most shorthanded goals in the playoffs so far of these final 4 teams. I don't know the stat on that, I'm kind of just assuming. Now looking at the Golden Knights stats here, they've scored an average of 3.08 goals per game throughout the playoffs and allowed an average of 2.38 against, and their special teams really haven't been the greatest. Their power play's been abysmal, just 14.3%, and their penalty kill, kind of mediocre like Montreal's power play, 71.4%. So these stats for Vegas, they aren't really as good as you would expect. I mean, look at the numbers on the right-hand side of the stats. 3rd, 4th, and 3rd. They don't have any of those stats in the top 2 of the 4 remaining teams. Now, does that matter a whole lot? It might not, but it's still interesting to look at nonetheless. Now, quickly taking a look at the offensive leaders for each of these teams, the Montreal Canadiens are led by Tyler Toffoli with 10 points. Just continues to be an amazing signing, and I'm sure continues to make Vancouver fans punch their drywall. You then have Nick Suzuki with 8 points, and then Yoel Armia and Eric Stahl with 7 points apiece. On the Vegas side of things, you have William Karlsson leading the way with 11 points, Jonathan Marchessault, Mark Stone, and Max Pacioretty all with 8 points apiece. And that reminds me, I completely forgot about this, but a big storyline heading into this series is Max Pacioretty playing against his former team, the team that he was a captain of at the time he was traded. And then on the Montreal side of things, you have Nick Suzuki playing against the team that drafted him, the team that traded him for Max Pacioretty. That should be pretty interesting to follow. And finally, before I give you guys my prediction, the goalie stats, Marc-Andre Fleury, 8-4, a 1.91 goals against and a 9.23 save percentage. He's been unreal. And then Robin Lehner, 0-1, a 7.03 goals against and an 8.11 save percentage. We know who's going to be going for Vegas. It's going to be Fleury, and I do feel bad for Robin Lehner because the one game that he got in, Vegas just didn't show up. It wasn't his fault that they got blown out in that game. Just pretty unfortunate for Lehner. Now looking at the Montreal Canadiens, only going to show one goaltender, Carey Price, 8-3, a 1.97 goals against and a 9.35 save percentage. Playoff Price, man, it's a real thing. Jake Allen is not going to sniff ice time in this series, if I had to guess, unless Carey Price gets injured, but fingers crossed that doesn't happen. So that does it for the breakdown. Now let's get into my predictions. Obviously, the Vegas Golden Knights are the heavy favorites heading into this series. They are coming off of knocking off the President's Trophy winners in 6 games to now playing a team that came into the playoffs with the lowest amount of points of any team that made it. They're there were actually 2 teams in the NHL that didn't make the playoffs that had more points than Montreal. Those teams were Dallas and New York. Realistically, Vegas should win this series, and they should do it relatively quickly. I know a lot of people were already saying before this matchup was even finalized, they were saying the winner of Vegas-Colorado automatically goes to the Stanley Cup Final because Montreal isn't going to get a game off either of those teams. And for some reason, I just don't get the feeling that that's the way this is going to go. I feel like it's going to be harder for Vegas than a lot of people think. The Montreal Canadiens just have this feeling about them in these playoffs like they're not going to be denied. It doesn't feel like their Cinderella story is just going to come to a screeching halt and they're going to get swept here. They had the better regular season and it wasn't even close. They were in contention for the President's Trophy. All logic points to Vegas winning this series. But you know what? I'm going to predict that the Montreal Canadiens do the impossible and pull off the upset here and advance to the Stanley Cup Finals. With the way Carey Price has been playing in the playoffs so far, this team has a chance no matter who the opponent is. Would I bet a whole lot of money on Montreal winning this series? No, of course not. But I am going to predict them for this video. I didn't just want to give you guys 2 boring answers. Oh, Tampa Bay and Vegas. I just have this feeling about Montreal. So that is going to do it for this video. Those are my predictions for the Stanley Cup semifinals. Still feels weird to say that. I gotta train myself to not say conference finals. But like I said at the start of the video, be sure to let me know your predictions for each of these series down below in the comments section. And then if you want to go a step further than that, who do you have winning the Stanley Cup? Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed and you want to see me do another one of these videos for the Stanley Cup final matchup when that is set. If you guys want to see it, I'll definitely do it. So leave a like. That's the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button and I will talk to you all in the next video.